TechAfrica News podcast from Africa for Africa. In partnership with Smart Africa. George, you had quite an exciting year at Cell C. Can you share a bit what was the most exciting part and where did you see most of the challenges?
Yeah, thanks very much. It has been exciting to say the least. Lots has been on the go. I think for us, it's been keeping to our strategy. So we've always wanted to have the best culture in the country. And we've been very strong and deliberate and intentional on building a good team and making sure that we recruit the best, but that they fit into the culture, the value system that we're looking for. So that was critically important. We also had to structure our technology setup. So there's been a lot done in the way we show up from a technology point of view and specifically network quality. Funding, so from a cash perspective, it's been very constrained. We've had lots of challenges in the past, so that's been something that we've had to deal with and make sure that we've got a good plan going forward. So lots of work on trying to make sure the business is sustainable, but also that adds tremendous value to customers. And how do we enrich South African lives through the power of technology? And that's been important for us. So lots on the go. It's been fun. It's been busy.
So we easily can say you started to reshape Cell C or the DNA of Cell C. So was there anything where you would say, look, that surprised me? Because from your background, you come from a MNO giant Vodacom, now with Cell C. Is there anything you can share and say, look, that was quite specific?
Yeah, I don't think there were any surprises in terms of what I thought needed to be addressed. I think what the real issue was is the size and magnitude of the challenges. So whilst you think there's a cash challenge, there really is a cash challenge. It's just significantly bigger. When you think there's a tech challenge, there really is a challenge, just a little bit wider and more specifically broader than what one expected. But largely, it was very, very aligned to what the expectation was in what to fix and what to address, and making sure that we do it in a sustainable way. So that's the real trick. The real trick is to make sure that we have a good, sustainable business going forward, and not quick fixes that will give you short-term results, but then we're back in the situation a year or two down the line.
So there was a long-term strategy behind the reshaping of Cell C, could say.
Yeah, absolutely. When I say long-term, we're talking 3 to 5 years as initial plan. We've got ideas in how to shape the business beyond that, but I call it the parachute stuff, right? First, the parachute's got to open, and then you worry about the next step. If it doesn't open, then don't worry about the next step, and that's what we had to do. It's a business that was in crisis, a business that requires some fundamental changes and fixes. So we're doing those, and then we've got options on how we progress beyond the 3 to 5 year plans.
So are you happy with the progress you made so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I think sometimes I've also got to be realistic. I want things done a little bit faster, but the reality is some things just take a little bit of time to be done properly and in a sustainable way. But I'm generally happy with the progress that we've made. I think we're trending well, and all the KPIs, non-financial specifically, so really running the business, are trending in the right direction, which I think stands us in good stand going forward to make sure that, again, we've got this business that's got longevity.
All right. I heard you in previous interviews, you always mentioned the customer centricity and let's say so-called new revenue streams as well you can generate through that. So if you look at new revenue streams, when we see from a classical voice data business and you compare it with the other giants, would you say that at the moment it's not really interesting for you to explore probably OTT, mobile, finance, whatever?
I think it's both. To be brutally honest, you have to do the bread and butter stuff well. So do we show up competitively, great value, good quality on voice and data, fixed, mobile, prepaid contract, etc.? Absolutely. You have to do that well and compete so that from a connectivity perspective, you're stacking up very nicely. But then you have to look at what else and how does this industry start shaping itself going forward? And what we're trying to do is maybe today's products are voice and data. But maybe those are the ingredients for tomorrow's product. So the consumption of voice and data ultimately allows for a product to be sold. And I think there's an opportunity to play in that space. Of course, I'm not going to give away too much. So you have to make sure that you are well positioned to be able to do that. There's lots of talk around financial services. Will we play in that space or not? We've been very deliberate about how our partnerships are so important to us. And if you take our MVNO space, we have partners in that sector. So we'll do whatever we need to do with them as partners as opposed to competing.
So, but if at some point your customer would demand, you would listen to them, obviously.
Absolutely. So it's how we go to market. It's about if there was a play in financial services of some sort, Would we partner with our current MVNOs that are great partners to us? Absolutely. We'd never be going directly and trying to make sure that we compete with them.
All right. If we compare you to giants like Vodacom and MTN, so how does Cell C structure set you apart, and what would you say are the unique advantages you bring in?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I think we're a lot leaner. Obviously, we're smaller. Therefore, I think we're a lot more agile. The way we set up is to make sure that we've got a chief growth officer to talk to exactly that. So we running the business in very traditional ways when you look at prepaid, postpaid, but we actually are set up in a structure that is a cross-functional kind of structure to allow for growth. We've looked at progressive kind of policies. So our chief human resources guy is actually a chief people officer. And we're looking at policies that are very different. For example, unlimited leave for the first 3 layers. We're testing that at the moment, and it's going really well. We think that it's impossible to use rules of the past where you're going to work for 330 days a year, take 2 weeks off and come back and be refreshed for the entire 12 months. So the way we structured the types of policies that we're putting forward is to find a unique way of, not just for the sake of being different, but how do we make sure that we are well set up for today's way of working, for today's customers and their demands, for the managing the pressure that gets put on staff complement in terms of flexi working policies. Everybody's at home, then everybody's forced to come to work. And we think if you've got a mature workforce and you measure output and you've got good, smart KPIs, it really doesn't matter where you work from. And I think that's an advantage that we'll set ourselves up for in the future by being structured this way. So we're leaner. I think we're lighter. Our CapEx model is fundamentally different from a network strategy point of view. We're now a big buyer of technology services from providers like MTN and Vodacom who build networks very, very well. And that allows us to compete on good network quality, where otherwise we may not be able to compete on the same footing if we had to spend the capex that they spent.
All right. So I can hear you would like to introduce a new spirit into Cell C when we talk about the working environment to really take care of the people who are with you on this journey.
Absolutely. Culture has been our number one priority. I think that good people you need around you, obviously that stands to reason. But in good days, it's easy to lead. In tough days, when the market is tough, the economy is tough, unemployment's rough, load shedding, which now looks like a thing of the past. So big well done to the new Eskom team. So they're doing really good work there. But when you have good days, it's easy to lead. It's when you have tough days, and you need great people that are individually skilled and really good at what they do, but more importantly, that they work well in a team, because you're going to win or lose as a collective. It's not about this division or that division. It's about the collective Cell C really showing up and then being real allies to our customers, making sure that we live through a value system which we've created called this: transparency, honesty, integrity, and simplicity, with deep partnerships to make sure that it's a win-win. So with that kind of value system and that kind of partnership model, with a great culture, good skill set, I think it really makes us unstoppable in being able to achieve something very, very spectacular in this industry.
All right. So would you say that's in line with the strategy your now majority shareholder Blue Label would, let's say, agree on and understands the vision?
No, absolutely. I think we've got full support of our shareholders, and that's great. They've been very aligned. They've been very supportive, and it's been great working with them. There's an entrepreneurial spirit that's in the organization at a shareholder level. So I'm very grateful, and it was kind of one of the things we agreed right up front, is that if we're going to go and do something unique, we're not going to disrupt for the sake of disrupting. We're not going to be different for the sake of being different. We're just going to make sure that we give customers what they really want in a great value, with great pricing, great quality, and they will come to us as a result of that. And when you start adding the peripherals, for example, our Blue Label majority shareholder has a number of companies in the portfolio. So if you look at our ecosystem, prepaid electricity, huge volumes of prepaid electricity go through Blue Label. If you look at ticketing, Ticket Pro is another one of those organizations. So there's a lot of these entities in the group, in the ecosystem, that we can really take advantage of and bundle them together to provide services that go beyond just core mobile.
All right, interesting. When we look at Africa, so we're a very young continent. Majority of the people are below 30. So, and when we then look at digital transformation and bridging the digital divide, which is still a big issue what we have on the continent, what's Cell C's take on making tech accessible, for example, for South Africans?
That's a great question, and we continuously strive to do that. With our limited resources, we are very committed to making sure that underserviced areas get connectivity. So we have a number of initiatives that are in play, from connectivity to schools, setting up centers with laptops and full connectivity, training. We've also got programs where there's a whole bunch of coding that takes place. It used to be for girls, it's now for kids in general, so of a certain age group and school and so on. So there's huge amounts of effort and initiatives behind what we're doing to make sure we bring that to the table. But also why, if you look at the big debate going on with Starlink and can they bring in cheaper connectivity to those specific areas, as long as they adhere to the rules of the country and so on, we welcome that. We support that. Anything that can bring the cost of connectivity down and make sure that we've got access to specifically more poor and rural areas, absolutely, we have to do it. I think it's a basic right nowadays, to be brutally honest, the communication.
Yeah, I fully agree. You just mentioned schools, and so how do you see digital literacy as a key issue for economic growth?
Yeah, I agree. I think that the real challenge is how do we set up from public-private partnership structures to make sure that we've got education curriculums that talk to the skills of the future, because whether we like it or not, automation is happening, robotic process automation and so on. So you want to make sure that the more linear jobs get retrained so that there's a great level of employment, making sure that the jobs of the future are catered for. So it's not just today, but going forward. And technology is there to stay. It's going to improve. It's iterative. It's going to expand all the time. So we have to embrace it. And I think if we can the most basic format, if you take a school with just a teacher on a tablet can now educate scholars under a tree in a rural area. And of course, that's the most basic format. But you have that capability today that our technology and the industry, the sector's technology allows that to happen. We need to fast track that. We need to put a tablet and a smart device into every single pupil's hand so that they can learn in this digital way and give them the basic rights that set them up for some level of success in the future.
How do you see affordability in terms of how can we make it more accessible?
I think affordability is on a couple of fronts. The one is the cost to communicate. So, how do we make sure that cost to communicate comes down all the time? So there's the voice data kind of components. The second is the hardware that's associated with that. So prices have continued to come down, and we look at a lot of value that gets put into the market. We'll continue to drive that for sure. There's no doubt about it. We want to be the consumer champion. And in terms of hardware, there's lots of partnerships, including the OEMs themselves. And then there's various financing options nowadays. So we are actually busy working with the new minister and the sector around how do we switch from 2G and 3G devices to 4G and 5G. That means switching off that spectrum band to make it more efficient use of 4 and 5G, making sure that you've got a higher penetration of smartphones. So that may include subsidies that come into smartphones. It may include removing of ad valorem taxes. It may include penalizing, if you like, the import of 2G devices, because that's not going to help in this direction that we're looking for. So there's a whole lot of these conversations and proposals on the go, and we've been cooperating very well with the sector to make sure that these are going to start being implemented.
Just out of curiosity, based on your long experience in the telco and the mobile operator sector, do you see that there is a real movement going on? Do you think things getting better? Because from my side, I had these conversations over the last 10 years, and we're making steps, but small steps.
In terms of bringing the pricing down and in terms of affordability?
Both, and accessibility for this solution.
Yeah, I think we are making good progress. I think it could happen faster. If you look at some of the coverage in rural areas and so on, I think that can happen a little bit faster. If you look at bringing the pricing of smartphones and tablets down, I think that's happened quite well. It needs to further be accelerated, and hence a lot of products in the market on prepaid handset financing and those kind of options to take advantage of that and make sure that the pricing is a lot more affordable. But I think that still needs to be accelerated further, and you need a bit of a framework. The conversation we've just had around, what role does government play, the sector play, the SARS, et cetera, on making sure that as a sector, we're well set up for this. So I think there's a bit still to go, a long road actually, to be honest. But I think the transformation is starting to happen at a faster pace now.
And we could say it's very important that there's a constant communication between the private sector and the public sector when you see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think we've always had that, in fairness. I think we've had a lot of movement in the sector. So it is very welcome and very refreshing to be able to communicate and communicate regularly. We need to make sure that that does translate into real actions. Otherwise, we'll just be speaking and having conversations. And whilst they're great, they need to materialize into some actions, which the country so badly needs. But I do think that from a technology perspective, we play a pivotal role in making sure that we unlock some real economic growth. So I think lots is happening. We need to make sure it translates into actions.
So we can be optimistic.
Absolutely, I am. I'm hoping that we make sure we hold everybody accountable, ourselves included, to make sure that this takes place.
That's great. That's great. The MVNO market has been buzzing here. And what do you think makes it such an exciting space, especially if you compare it to other countries, other areas like Europe, where it's not such a positive movement in terms of MVNOs?
Well, for Cell C, we've been very deliberate and intentional about an MVNO strategy. We've got great partners and we want to partner deeply. I keep saying this and I know I sound repetitive, but it's very important that we have partnership models. And what that means is, what are the behaviors of that particular partner's industry or sector that they'd like to unlock through voice and data propositions and vice versa. And the moment that you align that and you have a level of personalization that takes place there, you're onto something very special and very unique. So it's not like days gone by where you literally sell wholesale data and wholesale minutes to an MVNO, and then you leave them alone for a year and you hope that they succeed. And we've seen very strong brands come and go, and no disrespect to these brands, but brands like Virgin Mobile and Red Bull Mobile and Trace, they've come and gone. You need to integrate it very deeply into your core business. So if you're in banking or if you're in retail, what are those values and behaviors that you'd like to extract and take advantage of from a customer point of view that telco services can unlock, and vice versa? The moment that you start doing that, you'll see some traction. And we certainly are starting to see some traction with very good partners. And that's why I'm very excited about that sector of our particular strategy, because with these deep partnerships, you can unlock something that you haven't unlocked before.
So we easily could say you really need to have a proper business model and strategy before you even think about becoming an MVNO.
Absolutely. I think far too many MVNOs in the past have not succeeded because of exactly that. We don't want to just sell wholesale voice and data at a discounted rate and then hope that you compete with the network operators. That doesn't make any sense. You need to ensure that there's a deeper level of integration, and whatever that means for that particular partner. They're not the same. So if you're wanting to give back a significant amount of rewards, you may be looking to just buy cheap data and voice. But how do you allocate those rewards? How does that criteria stack up in your own sector? And how do we unlock that in a collective way together? And that level of personalization makes it very, very, especially for products that are critical to everyday usage. So if you take utilities, electricity, banking, voice data, and you start aligning on those, and you've got high levels of engagement, I think you can unlock some amazing things.
But is that really a future-proof model? If I just think out loud, let's say in the next 5 to 10 years, we reduce the cost of data and voice, is it really attractive still for someone to use it as a kind of a loyalty bonus?
Absolutely. I think one has to remember, if you take a mobile network operator setup, you have distribution, you have network, you have all of those costs. In order to go and discount to the level that you have to give an MVNO, you will reprice your own business first. So larger operators typically won't be that excited about going down an MVNO route, because that level of success will ensure a faster level of cannibalization on your existing business. Now, if you take an MVNO business that doesn't have, from a network operator perspective, you're removing the distribution cost because you're using an MVNO. If it's a bank, you use their footprint. If it's a retailer, you use their footprint. You use their marketing, it's their brand. So you're taking away those costs. And when you look at those costs that you remove as an MNO and place that level of support into an MVNO, then you're still working in really good margin space. So as long as you're happy with the partnership structure, I think you can deliver unbelievable things.
So there's no way that it cannibalize the business models among each other.
Well, if you're a big network operator and you want to go hard into MVNOs, I suspect that you may have a stronger level of cannibalization.
Okay.
So if I take Capitec as a business for us, 10% of our customers, Cell C customers, are moving to Capitec. So my level of cannibalization is relatively small. And then you generate that revenue anyway through the MVNO business. But if you're another network operator, you're losing largely to a business like Capitec Connect or F&B Connect, and the list goes on in terms of these MVNOs. So we think we're very well positioned for this type of business. It's up to the larger operators to determine to what extent they want to go into that model or not.
Right. So as the go-to host for MVNOs, how do you see the competition moving? Especially the last few months, we heard other MNOs starting now to focus more on the MNO business. Are you afraid of losing the leadership in that regard?
No, not at all. We welcome competition. I think we're very well positioned. Nothing wrong with an MVNO wanting to go dual vendor strategy or dual network strategy, as you can put it that way. So we welcome it. I think we're very well positioned. We've been accelerating that business. It's been growing nicely. Revenue's growing, traffic's growing. And we've aligned with each of our MVNO partners of what that strategic intent is from that particular business and how do we support them better all the time. So this is ongoing. It's iterative. We work very closely together. So it's exciting. We happy that sector is growing because it's very deliberate and intentional for us. And I think the more that it grows, the more we are in a strong position to capitalize on that.
Okay. So we could say the MNO business is one of your main pillars in terms of your strategy.
Well, we've got prepaid, we've got postpaid. On the consumer side, we want to make sure that we improve what we've done. On the enterprise side, we want to grow. We haven't done much in the past, and we want to do it in a partnership model. We won't be hiring a whole bunch of corporate salespeople to do the direct model. We'll do partnering. But there's a place for that business. There's a place for the MVNO business. And we want to make sure that, we don't just have, if this is a fishing analogy, just one line in the water. We want to have a number of lines in the water and making sure that we've got really good bait at the end of each line and that we capitalize on those different sectors through good partnerships. So I think that's critically important for us. So we're quite excited about the future.
All right. You just mentioned enterprises. I would like to go ahead with another question. Where do you see the biggest opportunities for Cell C when we look at enterprises and 5G?
Yeah, I think there'll be a few opportunities in the large enterprise space, but those will be by exception, I think, to be brutally honest. I think in the SME SOHO space, there's a large opportunity. I think there's a lot of consumer-like behavior in that space, and we believe that we're very well set up to be able to partner. So I think there's good growth there. There's also some opportunities in the government sector. We haven't played in RT15 or RT29 for a number of years, and I think there's an opportunity for Cell C to play in that space. And then on enterprise, I think that's where, from a 5G point of view, there might be a few use cases. It's difficult to monetize 5G at a consumer level. I've always said this. I remain in that position. I think it carries traffic more efficiently. You might have, by exception, a bit of a decent user experience or better user experience compared to 4G, but not monetizable. So, no consumer is going to pay for a 5G experience versus a very good 4G experience. But on enterprise, I think you could land up, and I know some of our competitors are doing some stuff already. If you take open cast mines or some level of automation, you want to make sure that you've got a good network that can carry you. And so I think that's where 5G will play a role. But I don't think it will be a big amount of revenue that will come out of 5G monetization, even at an enterprise level.
So you think the MNOs should probably rather focus more on developing or stabilizing the 4G connectivity and affordable devices and affordable services before they think about going the next step to 5G. I'm just thinking about even a 5G device here in Africa is not one of the cheapest.
Yeah, exactly. I think you got a good experience, but are you prepared to pay for a 5G device on the 5G network when, I'll give you an example. If you play a YouTube video on a 4G device on a 4G network and it plays without buffering or anything like that, and you do the same thing on a 5G device and it plays, you're not going to pay for it. The fact that it's using this technology or that technology, and that's the difficulty with 5G, is that I think it's great to carry traffic more efficiently, but you still need more cell density. You need to build more sites. So there's a cost to get the efficiency, and that ratio is not working out very favorably. And on the enterprise space, there's not a lot that's happening that generates significantly more revenue to compensate for it. So I think it's a tricky one. All investments into 5G and batteries, energy from a load shedding point of view have proved very difficult returns because it's kind of necessity, but not really monetizable. And that's the complexity. And these investments are largely in the billions. So it's a significant amount of capex that you have to invest for not very great returns.
Yeah, I fully agree. Fair share has been a quite hot topic lately. So what's your take on how we keep things fair in the telecom industry?
Look, I think operators are under pressure and understand where the topic comes from in the conversation. You're looking for different revenue streams. I've maintained and I continue to maintain that I think commercial arrangements are probably the way to go in resolving some of these. And I think that's what the sector is saying is let's talk to the OTT players in terms of commercial arrangements and so on. If you look at the industry in totality, fixed line providers would say, but that's what I want. I'm not interested in fair share because I build fiber connectivity to use the Netflixes, the YouTubes of the world, etc., etc. So they have a different position maybe to a mobile operator, which looks at traffic and how traffic is contested and so on, and very difficult to dimension a mobile network to achieve that level of data consumption without impacting the throughput and speeds and so on. So I think one has to be very cautious in the approach to have it regulated as such. I would go more with commercial agreements because anyway, a lot of these OTT players do commercial activities with all the network operators. So let me put it this way. I package a YouTube bundle or a Netflix bundle or a Prime Video bundle with my current core GSM proposition. I sell it to the market and then say, but if you use that, I need to get a little bit of share back from the very person that I'm packaging it with. So it's a bit conflicting. And I think that's where the conversations need to be more commercial rather than kind of regulatory. And I think that's where the sector is at.
Also, out of curiosity, do you think that streaming and OTT services are, let's say, could be the next new revenue streams for MNO, MVNO?
No, I'm not sure about that. I think use of the product in the mobile space is good for small periods, highlights packages. And for genuine streaming, I think not on the GSM side. I think it consumes too much bandwidth and you need to shape and dimension your network accordingly. So that's kind of fixed wireless packages, which typically would be in the 5G space, so FWA products. And there you'd have to lock it down to a particular piece of hardware and even the geography so that you can manage the network appropriately. But I think it will remain kind of highlights and those kind of small bundles, not streaming per se with big data packages. If you've got in vehicle tracking dash cams as an example, and you're taking snippets and it's compressed data, fine. I think that can work. But if you've got a lot more high resolution streaming taking place, I think you're going to need fiber products or fixed wireless access kind of products to do that better and to have a good user experience.
All right.
I think in terms of streaming, I think all network operators have gone down this route. Cell C's had their very own investment into Black, the streaming platform, and it hasn't worked out. A number of the other operators have had different products, same thing, hasn't worked out. So I don't think that's a rev stream of the future. I think it's stuff that's been attempted and hasn't worked out that well.
So they should play a role as an aggregator if they want to.
Yeah, each operator would have to align on their own personal strategy, but I just think as a sector, that's been attempted and many have failed. So, each to their own, but certainly I think when you look at streaming and a contested network in the mobile space, it becomes quite tricky.
Or even smart home, if you look at many operators who failed with smart home as well. So
smart home, I would still say there's an opportunity because you've got fiber into the home, and therefore you can then make sure that you carry all that traffic. It's a bit different to mobile. What one would have to look at there is, like in the past, is look at revenue stream. So when you go fiber, that's great, and you tick that box, so you got the fixed revenue. But all your mobile revenue when you come home in the evening declines because you're no longer using the mobile revenue. So you're going to have to make sure that what you've lost on mobile revenue more than is compensated for on the fixed line side for when you use the fixed line environment at home. So it's not so simple.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I heard you in many other conversations previously where you said you would like to get rid of TNCs in your product offering. So can you share a bit more about your, let's say, vision and how you can make it easy as possible for people?
Yeah, absolutely. I just think we need to sell products that customers want and not transparent. So I think in the sector, there's too many products that are bundled, for example, to actually price in things like breakage. So if I sell you 100 gigs, is it 100 gigs or is it 50 gigs anytime and 50 gigs at night? And so the reality is that a lot of what happens in the market is 50 in the day and 50 at night. And night changes depending on which network operator. So it's from 11 p.m. or midnight or 1 a.m. till typically 5 in the morning. And when you look at those products, a lot of that lands up in breakage. So you're not really buying 100 gigs. You're buying 50 plus a little bit more that you may accidentally use when you wake up early in the morning, etc. And I think that's the part that I'm trying to push as our organization, to say, how do we get to a position where it doesn't feel like you're tricking the customer? It doesn't feel like it's ambiguous. Even if that's not the intention, how does it come across? So I'm not suggesting that the networks are putting out products, ourselves included, that is deliberate to trick customers into buying a product that's not what they're getting. But it could be the unintended consequence. And I would like to have very little or no T's and C's. If I could do away with them, I would. So it's a journey that we're on, and we're starting more and more to make sure that we try and make it as simple as what it says when you advertise, and making sure that customers really understand your product in a simple way. Because we've overcomplicated the industry, I believe.
What is the reason that they offering it like that?
I think it's a factor of how the networks are set up. So I think if you've got an idle network at night and you want to monetize it, you're throwing in value that's not necessarily entirely used. I think as the industry shifts on different types of bearer types, so for example, SMS is not that popular anymore.
Yeah.
So if you get a package that's got X minutes, X megabytes, and X SMSs, the SMSs are really there just to look like you've got a fantastic proposition, but do you use it? Now, you need some. I think there's banking apps and so on that still requires that. That's where I think the sector is at. You've got to kind of amplify these different bearer types and different services where revenue is declining in a number of these over time. And one needs to look at monetization. The reality is that running a network is not a cheap exercise. And when you look at South Africa in particular, load shedding, I've said, has improved a lot, and well done to that team. But that's been significant costs invested into energy. And that's just to keep the lights on. So imagine putting billions into a network to do exactly what you did before.
Yeah.
It's really scary when you look at that level of investment. And I think that builds pressure on big network operators to ensure that revenue generation, which is in the thin single digits, outpace the cost of running the network, which is a little bit higher than that. And that's why you have these challenges on how to monetize products better.
All right. Looking down the road, what's on the horizon for Cell C? If you look for the next 3 to 5 years, and is there any specific tech or vision you see could be realized?
Yeah, look, we're very optimistic about the future. We have to do the crawl, walk, run scenario first and foremost. It's no secret that we've been a financially distressed organization. We've written off 44 billion. There's been significant bloodshed from a shareholder perspective. So that's nothing light to be taken into consideration. It's very serious. It's been very real. So we need to build a sustainable business. We believe we put a very realistic plan on the table. With the ingredients that we've got, I think we're showing up very nicely to represent the South African consumer very well in making sure that they get great value with good quality, and there's enough margin still. So that's the first steps. We've been very deliberate about our MVNO business. We've been very deliberate about fixing our consumer prepaid, postpaid business, as well as entering into what I'd say is a bit new for us, the enterprise space. And then we think there are some adjacent revenue opportunities, and the model that we've got on CapEx Lite, I think, is the beginning of something quite unique. There is a lot of ideas that I'm not going to share because they are obviously competitive and would give us the edge. But I think we're very well positioned to take advantage of a new way of doing business in the sector, given the ingredients that we've got. So I'm really optimistic about certainly Cell C's ambitions for the next 3 to 5 years. And we're not limited to what we can do over the next period beyond that. So I think there's lots of options that then open up.
So you're excited?
Absolutely. And I'm having a lot of fun. Of course, we're coming from a difficult place, but we've got really great people, great support from our shareholders, a nice culture that's getting built, good ingredients in the market. We're starting to get really good rapport with our business partners and consumers. So I think mostly it's trending well, and it's very exciting for us. So we do believe we'll have a sustainable business going forward.
Perfect. Thanks for your time, George. It was a lovely conversation. Thanks for your insights. And
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you.